logic using forms of valid arguments. So you can always make a truth table to decide whether or not any argument is valid, but some forms of arguments are so common they have special names. If you can recognize that an argument follows one of these forms, then you can declare the argument to be valid without the use of a truth table. So our first one is the Law of Detachment, which I think you all used quite a bit in geometry, whether you knew it or not. So, and it follows like this. If P, then Q. So if P is happening, then it would follow that Q is your conclusion. So if you have $30,000 in sales, you get a $1,000 bonus. So let's say then that you had $30,000 in sales, then it would make sense that it would follow that you got $1,000 in bonus. So law of detachment. So the next one is law of contraposition. So I think this law particularly would make sense, especially since we know that the conditional and the contrapositive are logically equivalent. So if we have if P then Q, and then we have not Q happening, it would make sense that not P would happen. So that would also be a common form that we would know that that would be a valid argument. So if they offer me free delivery, I'll purchase a dining set. So I didn't purchase a dining set, therefore they didn't offer me the free delivery as an example of that. Okay, then the next one is something that's going to seem like the transitive property for you if you remember any geometry, and this would be the law of syllogism. And I'll just put transitive out here. So that follows if we have the two arguments, two statements, if P then Q, if Q then R, then it would follow that we have if P then R. So an example here would be if Jack takes chemistry, then he'll have 16 hours of class. If Jack has 16 hours of class, he'll work 15 hours a week. Therefore, if Jack takes chemistry, then he'll work 15 hours a week. So law of syllogism. So you'll notice on everything we have so far, we have a if-then statement. Okay, so we have law of detachment, law of contraposition, and law of syllogism. So on the next page, we're going to have the law of disjunctive syllogism. Let me pause this. So let me go ahead and write that out. Law of disjunctive syllogism. Okay, so we have P or Q. So they're saying if P didn't happen, then Q would have to happen. Now I need to let you know that we could also have if Q didn't happen, P would have to happen, okay? So both of these, I'm going to go ahead and write that up there because that's bothering me, would be law of disjunctive syllogism. Okay, so let's look at example 15. Decide if the following arguments are valid using the given forms of valid arguments. So the only one that we would even think about disjunctive syllogism would be this one right here. Okay, so on A, B, and D, it would have to be law of detachment, law of contraposition, or law of syllogism or transitivity. Okay, so in this case, we have if not P, then Q. So not Q happened. So for it to follow the contraposition, the not Q happen, we would have to have not P happen, right? So what is the opposite of the negation of P? Well, we have P. And that's exactly what we have there. Now, some people, my students, are troubled because we started off with a not P, and like that, well, that doesn't follow anything. Well, just think of it as the opposite of P happening. Okay, so that's going to be valid because of the law of contraposition. All right, so let's look at B. If P, then Q. If not Q, then not R. Therefore, it follows if P, then not R. Well, can we say that, though? Doesn't look like it. So this doesn't follow the law of syllogism. So I really can't determine by any of my laws Now I could set up a truth table and determine if it was valid or not. Okay. All right, so let's look at the D. I have if not P, then not Q. And then we have not Q. Well, does that follow, and then therefore not P? Does that follow any of our laws? Well, certainly not law of detachment. Law of contraposition, it would have to be the opposite of the not Q, right? So that doesn't really go. Definitely not the law of syllogism. So we're going to say that we can't determine by common laws of valid arguments again, okay? Now, we are going to be able to determine this in a little bit, and I will try to jump back when we're talking about the fallacies. But right now we're using the forms of valid arguments. Okay, so let's look at C. We have P or Q. Well, not not Q, so Q didn't happen. So if Q didn't happen, therefore P would happen. Now remember how we said that it could be either the not P or we could use the not Q, and if you had the positive of the P or the Q there, then we could say yes, that is valid by law of disjunctive syllogism.